2, 1. Welcome to another Tired Dad podcast. This is episode 29, and I'm your host Nathan Ross, and with me we have
Melissa Ross.
And today we're going to talk about conversation to criticism. This is part 2 of I asked the devil, i.e. AI, how he would ruin a marriage last week, and we did part 1. Can you remember what part 1 was about?
It was all about breaking down the foundations, wasn't it?
Breaking down the foundations of a marriage relationship. Today we're going to talk about shifting from conversation to criticism, and if the devil, aka AI, was going to break down a relationship, he would turn conversations into criticism. He would, instead of talking about us, he would always say, you're always doing this, and many more things that we're going to explore. You go. Because I know this is your thing. You love this part. Because it all talks about the entwining of the relationship.
What, communication?
Yes, communication is today.
The key to success.
This is what Mrs. Ross is like. Okay, we're going to pick our little one up from youth club, and we're sitting in the car. And just before she goes to pick her up, what was the question you asked me? Just before you were about to get out of the car to go and pick our daughter up, what did you ask me?
What's the biggest way you feel like you've grown in the past year?
What's the biggest way you feel like you've grown in the past year? While it was a great question, I'm just sitting
Which
there.
I'm still waiting for the answer for.
I'm just sitting there chilling. Not like we had a deep conversation beforehand.
I like to just throw them out there.
And she threw a bombshell like that. So I was like, I'll answer you when you get back. And I still haven't answered yet, would I? No. Which I might answer. Okay, so how would the devil destroy communication? Number 1, he'd turn a conversation to criticism. We've got some notes down because I think it's important that we stick to a guideline on this, because we can go off and it can then involve other areas that we're going to explore later on. So number 1, he'd shift from conversation in a marriage to criticism.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
Very easily done. Basically, your communication between each other turns negative, becomes toxic potentially.
Yeah.
You're feeling like you're at odds with each other. You're not batting for the same team anymore.
Yeah.
And it can become like that very quickly with a feeling of resentment.
I feel like this is a fine line, you know.
Yeah. Why is that?
Because there's always a lot of talk about narcissists, isn't there, in this, in relationships. You're a narcissist because you're always talking about me, or you're a narcissist because you never, you're always thinking about selfishness and blah, 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 blah. And gaslighting and all these words come to play when relationships broken down, obviously. But I think one of the things that I do believe in a marriage that can go very credibly fast wrong, even though that all doesn't make sense.
I know what you mean.
You know what I mean? Yeah. Is you're nagging.
Mainly from a man to a woman, I would say. Yeah.
No, the woman's nagging.
Yeah, so from a man saying it to
from
a woman,
man,
you're a nag.
Sorry, yeah. You're a nag that you can't see going on.
Yeah.
Why does it get to that point?
Because you don't listen.
What do you mean you don't listen?
I think the whole nagging thing is people are not respecting their spouse's needs and requests in terms of, if I'm saying I need this from you, and it's not a slave mentality that you have to do everything I say.
Yeah.
But if I'm expressing a need or a want to you, why, as your spouse or your other half, would you not want to listen and try and not obey is the wrong word, but why would you not want to be that one person who does sort of try and make everything better in their life? We had this conversation earlier, didn't we, about serving your spouse?
Yeah.
And really, let's be honest, the relationship with your spouse really needs to take precedent over other relationships. And I know we can say, your kids always come first. At different points of your lifetime with your spouse, your kids probably do come first.
Yeah.
But your relationship with your spouse is the one that's going to last longer than any other relationship.
Yeah.
Your kids, hopefully, you'll raise them right to want to leave home eventually and start their own families and build their own relationships. Parents, they will pass on eventually. Siblings, they have their own families. So really, your spouse is the only person that you're ever intertwined with.
Okay, meaning, so what's that got to do with communication?
That you should want to listen. You should want to have that mutual respect. You should want to...
But I think which is great, it sounds ideal, but when you're having a relationship breakdown where you're blaming each other, criticising each other, you just then, or whoever, it looks like they're constantly nagging, doesn't it?
You've got to take some self-accountability for that and change your attitude.
Yeah.
And like we've talked about before, when you talked about dads and how they can sort of build their build up their homes, how you walk into a room and how you bring your mood sets the tone for everything.
Yeah.
I said to you earlier, I wasn't in a great mood when I drove home from work. I haven't been feeling well. I'm tired. But I walked in through the door and I was like, do you know what? I could come in and take it out on you, or I could just offer to come
and she did.
Help with the dry.
No, joking, you did.
No, you were washing up and I was like, let me come and dry up. And you were like, no, babe, it's fine. Go and sit down. I was like, no, because I can help.
Yeah.
I think it's all about attitude.
Yeah, it's all about attitude.
Your attitude can change everything.
I think when it comes down to, from a man's point of view, communication, women want to talk about it loads and dissect everything. Men just want to go, okay, cool, I get it, move on quick. Yeah. However, I would say from a dad's point of view, most men that say they want to get on with it quick do, but then it bottles up and bottles up and bottles up and bottles up. And I think what happens then is, from a man's point of view, it all comes out in one big go later on.
Usually. That's how it goes.
Usually. Because women obviously are perfect.
No, not at all. But I think the devil's in the detail with women, isn't it? We like to dissect everything and go through everything. And my big thing with you is when we have disagreements, I want to iron it completely out so I don't feel like it's going to be repeated. Whereas you're like, it's done, leave it.
Done. It's done and dusted. If you know what that word means, done and dusted, you know what it means, mate. It's done and dusted. Assumptions, they're a big thing in communication, aren't they? Because we assume you're going to have a go at us. We assume you're going to say something that we don't want to hear. We assume that you're just going to nag.
You judge each other on past experiences or past arguments or past sort of battles with each other. Yeah. And it kind of gets to the point, I think, eventually where if it's gone down that route, you think, what's the point? Yeah. I'm not going to bother because she's just going to react like this, or what's the point? I could do all this for him and it's not going to make any difference anyway. But the assumption is always guessing, isn't it? So you could actually decide that you're going to change your attitude towards the situation instead of making an assumption. Bring your best self to the party, so to speak.
But you can't do all the time, though.
No, not at all. No, not at all. But there's always a strive for that, isn't there?
But also, I think assuming misjudges things, doesn't it? So when you assume something or whatever the situation is, you can assume they feel like this and all that sort of thing. That brings misjudgment, misinterpretation, which then snowballs into other areas of your life and other arguments. And before you know it, you're having a massive argument about something that started so small and now is so big. Because of assumptions.
Well, miscommunication is going to turn into big resentment, isn't it? Yeah. Eventually. Yeah. If you're not being clear with each other, and that's where communication comes back into it. Yeah. Let's talk about that in terms of co-parenting. If people weren't together, assumptions is massive, isn't it? Yeah. When you take assumptions from a couple that are together to co-parents who are trying to raise a child but they're not together, assumptions plays a massive role in that, doesn't it? And actually assuming how the other person's feeling, assuming how the other person's going to act, and actually just sort of perhaps causing more problems because of the assumption.
When really the bottom line when it comes to communication is direct talking, isn't it? Yeah. Direct conversations, whether you're co-parenting, whether you're married. I think clarification is key when it comes to communication, because most of the time there's a lot of underground hits, isn't there? Especially like you're trying to have little digs at each other. You're trying to win conversations or arguments and all that sort of thing.
Well, for whatever reason, your relationship's broken down, so you're not on the best of terms anyway.
That's with co-parenting, but also with marriage. Yeah. You can be great, happily married. Doesn't mean you're not going to have massive or minute that goes to big arguments. And the key is ironing and clarifying what is the actual cause or what's the actual issue of the argument, isn't it? Because if you think about conversations, if you think about talking just generally between a man and a woman in marriage, most of the time when it turns into an argument, it's lack of understanding each other, isn't it?
I found a good way that excuse me. I found a good way that we have heated arguments. Like we're not perfect ourselves. No. Like, we go through it as well. Yeah. But I find the quickest way to diffuse is for us or for one of us to turn around and it escalates. Yeah. Is to turn around and go, what are we actually arguing about?
Yeah, I did not say that.
No, he doesn't.
That's argument. Did I not say what are we actually arguing about?
Yeah. What is the actual argument? What is the problem here? Like, what are you trying to express to me? What are you trying, like, I don't understand. Explain to me what the problem is.
Yeah.
So because arguments do get a little bit tit for tat, and then you start with the low blows.
I'm glad you're acknowledging this now on live.
I feel like being told off.
I'm glad you're acknowledging it, man. I'm really glad. So you are always bringing out the worst in arguments and making it all about you, aren't you?
Always.
I'm joking. No, okay, yeah, I do agree, because if you reverse it back to actually what the actual initial argument
usually
is,
it's something petty.
It's always petty. Unless, let's talk about something big. Imagine like a big argument. I know you've learned that the other person cheated, or you found out that, or the person says, I don't want to be with you anymore, and stuff like that. How do you navigate that type of conversation, Mel?
I don't know, because I've never had it.
Have you had that conversation?
It wasn't like you came to me and expressed what had happened. It didn't work like that, really, did it?
No, but after we got back together, I have to be honest with you, and we had to have very hard, deep. I remember sitting in the pub while Emily was at Chia, and you had a list of questions, which sometimes bringing paper to pen is quite a good way of going through a conversation if you want to have a hard conversation, isn't it?
I just knew post that conversation, and yes, we've had difficult conversations after that, but I knew that was the one time I didn't want to hear it, but I knew I needed to.
Yeah.
Ask every single unanswered question that I had, and the only way that I knew I would get it all out was writing it down. And I think it took me a couple of days, and I kept adding to it until I knew that I'd basically brain dumped every single thing that had bothered me over the last however many years, and I needed answers to all of it, clarification.
Yeah.
And then I knew I could not put it to bed, but I could put it to one side.
Yeah. I think if there's something massive that's happened, like we had something that big that was happened, I think bringing pen to paper, writing your thoughts on paper. I know I've got a friend that writes letters to his wife, and you might think that sounds really silly, but actually it's quite a good way of expressing your feelings, emotions to your partner without having a head on, because you can read it, think about it, and then bring the answer back to. And
also,
person.
The way that you write it is going to come out a lot nicer than it would if you just verbally spat it at someone.
Well, you're not going to argue, are you?
Yeah.
You're not going to argue with a letter.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. You're going to, I understand.
It's going to be put across a lot nicer.
Yeah, a lot nicer and a lot more easier than face to face. So I think that's a great way of getting things across. Also,
for you personally, writing letters to offload yourself that you're never actually going to send to anyone.
Yeah.
It might
Dear
be that.
Me.
Well, not even dear me. just writing down your thoughts to to just sort of get it off your chest, but also that might then save you going at your partner about it. So if you're feeling some type of way about it, but you're not actually looking for a resolution or some kind of conflict with your partner, write it down.
Yeah.
Explain it, and I think it explains to yourself why you're feeling that way.
Yeah. You can understand yourself more than
and it almost prevents then an unnecessary argument. I think
there's a thing that I want to talk about that's on here called resentment, and I think it's a massive reason why a lot of arguments happen. If we go back to about our situation, there was a lot of resentment from you towards me, which then caused a lot of arguments, and even if they might have been minute or massive, it doesn't really matter, because you had this sense of resentment towards me. It became big arguments, didn't it? And then what happens then?
Just builds, and then I think communication totally breaks down. I think you stop wanting to get your needs met from your partner. And I think that can be when you look elsewhere, not necessarily to cheat, but you put your energy elsewhere. And then we always talked last week about turning into your partner. You shouldn't be turning away. And I think with resentment, you start to turn your back, don't you?
And also that leads on to, I did a thing today on my Facebook post and on my Tired Dad post, and it was about, should a man have a close friend, which is a female? And it's not 50-50. It's like most men are saying no. Some have said yes. My personal opinion is no, I don't think you should have a close friend which is a female. But that then comes into, should you be confiding in the opposite sex anyway? Because that's how affairs happen. And a lot of people go, oh, if you don't trust yourself or you don't trust your partner and blah, 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 and all this sort of thing, or if you feel jealous, then that's a you issue, and all these sort of things. My issue is, if we weren't getting on and we were having arguments, and then I went and confided in the opposite sex, that number one disrespects you. That then makes, she was obviously going to compare with me and side with me, because that's going to make me feel and make her look good. So then that makes me feel better, which then justifies my actions then to come back to you and still continue our miscommunication and all that. When really, I should have been confiding in you, or I should be confiding in you. And that's where I think most men go wrong. Whether you've got a female partner as a best friend or not, you should not be taking your marriage issues to anyone outside your marriage. No,
not at all. We talked about your marriage being a bubble, and not allowing anybody to penetrate that bubble. And that happens very, very gingerly, shall I say, without you even realising. Like you say, you meet your so-called female friend, and you just explain, you're just talking in passing, and you say, you and your wife had an argument that night. Oh, what was it about? And before you know it, you divulge in the cracks.
They say, I wouldn't do that.
Before you know it, you divulge in the cracks in your relationship, because everybody has them. No one has a perfect relationship. No. But that's when I think the door is opened a little bit for people to sort of come in and.
So let's talk about some practical tools that dads and men can use to build better platforms, better foundation for better communication. Because AI, i.e. the devil, said basically if he was going to mess marriages up, he'd literally do this through making sure, let me just retract, he'd make sure he'd destroy all communication and break down communication between the pair, because AI knows that communication in marriage is key, obviously. So what are some good practical tools in order for you to think about moving forward so you can get a better, stronger relationship through communication?
Get rid of the assumptions. Ask for clarification.
And have the hard conversations. Instead of trying to surface level talk, have the hard conversations in it and ask for clarification. Don't assume. So what about cough?
Yeah. Sorry.
Choose curiosity over assumption. So instead of assuming, actually saying, well, I don't even understand what you mean, so explain it.
Stop pointing the finger. It's not you always do this and you always do that and you never make me feel this way and you never do this for me. It's I'm feeling this way about your behaviour, so what can we do about it?
And it's very easy from a man's point of view to, and I think we said this last time, it's very easy to look at what you're not doing or what your partner's not doing rather than what she is doing. And if you're in that negative mindset, then all you're going to see is what your partner's not doing. They don't give me sex. She doesn't understand what I'm doing. She doesn't know I work this many hours. And all the things that come out when reality is you're looking for them, are you?
They're highlighted when you're looking for a problem. When you're looking for a problem, you'll find one.
Yeah, definitely. And another way is replacing you always with I feel, which is quite a good one. I feel that. Instead of saying you always do this, you always do that, I feel like this, and sometimes is it because of this or is it because of
how can we fix it?
How can we fix it?
And that's true for relationships and potentially co-parenting as well. I'm feeling a bit disrespected because of how you're acting, or the fact that you keep turning up late to pick the kids up, or whatever it is. Rather than saying you're always late, you're going to receive that very differently to I'm feeling a bit disrespected because you keep turning up late. Please, can you sort it out?
You discuss it and make it easier.
Tone and the way you deliver.
You've always said it's how you deliver it.
But it is.
I know.
It really is.
That's very blunt.
But you need to try harder.
Hear that? That's the number one tool. Try harder.
Sometimes
we're tired.
Sometimes it isn't what you're saying, it's how you're saying it.
Oh, whatever. Yeah. Which is true, and I'll give you that, it's true. But sometimes, dads, it just comes out wrong.
You know, like when I ask you to rub my back and you're like, oh, go on then. Oh, come on, 5 minutes. And then you're like, or the response is, oh, yeah, of course, I will, babe, no problem. But it's such a different...
Did I do that the other night?
It creates such a different...
You're not answering the question. Did I do that the other night?
You'll get an answer when I get my answer from earlier.
Was it not the best massage ever? What's that bit off Friends?
Magic fingers.
Magic off Friends.
I don't know.
When you go, these hands, remember? Guys, if you're watching, guys, what part of Friends? Comment in the section. What part of Friends when he's like, these hands?
Oh no, it's Joey's hand twin.
Oh yeah, Joey's hand twin. That's it, Joey's hand twin. Who remembers that?
Obviously not you.
Yeah, I couldn't remember Joe and Ross because I was getting confused with Ross massaging.
Okay.
And he has the sticks.
Yeah,
He massages that old man with the
rolling
wooden
trucks up and down.
Yeah. Okay, another tool.
Slight detour there.
Yeah, another tool to get better at communicating, having open communication, is breaking the silence. The silence treatment, man. How many times have you used to do this? Laughing about it.
Yeah, no, but it used to go on for days, and it was, I'll be damned if I'm talking to him first.
She would never win. She never won, though. I was good at the silent treatment.
I don't know if that's... No, I don't know if that's entirely true. I don't know if that's entirely true. We were both as good as each other.
It's when you go to bed.
Yeah, and it's who's going to roll over and spoon first. And then
I lose.
Yeah. Because you're always the spooner first. And then you've lost, haven't you?
Yeah. I like a good spoon. You know me, a good spoon. But yeah, so before, a long time ago, we used to have the silence.
Was it last week or the week before where we'd had a bit of a falling out? And then I left the house and you were like, I think
Did you leave the house?
Yeah, because I was taking Emmy somewhere and you're like, I think you need to go out and it'll be fine when you come back. And I was like, but I don't like leaving the house when it's all like this. And to be fair, the 2 hours apart did do us the world of good because I walked in, we looked at each other and we literally laughed.
Yeah.
Because
it's stupid. It's stupid.
But
and when you're tired,
but it's crazy how ferociously angry you can be about something. You take yourself away for an hour. You come back and what was I angry about? I was so angry at you when I left the house, and when we came back,
I was angry with me.
We literally looked at each other and I think I was waiting to see what your reaction was. You were waiting to see mine, and we just laughed, and then that was it. So
yeah. So sometimes walking away and just saying.
Sometimes having a little break.
I have to admit, when I say to you, sometimes just leave it. Go upstairs and leave it.
I can't leave it.
Oh my life, that makes you worse.
Yeah, I hate the unresolved. What if we never saw each other again?
What if you died? Okay, so there we have it.
So that was our final tip. Sometimes have a break if you've got friction. Sometimes just to cooling down, having a little bit of a break can help.
Definitely. So there we have it. There are a few little tools that I believe you can use in order to go from criticism to better communication, to avoid the resentment spiral that keeps going round and round and round. Number 1, choose curiosity over assumption. Okay. Number 2, replace you always with maybe I feel. Number 3, ask open-ended questions instead of just jumping to conclusions. That's a big one, man. Jumping to conclusions. And number 4, break the silence. Start small, even if it's awkward at first. Things like sometimes just tickling each other. Yeah. Okay, that's always a good one, isn't it? Because
you got to remember, again, and I like to keep this very clear that we're not just speaking to couples here. It is co-parents as well. You're batting for the same team, even if you're not together, because if you're co-parenting, your thing that you've got in common is your child or your children. So even if you're not together, you've got a common ground somewhere, which is your kids.
Yeah, totally.
So you've got to remember that you are still trying to work together in some capacity. Yeah. And you've got to try and make that as effective as you can.
I think from a dad's point of view, we've got to understand that good communication isn't just about talking, okay? It's about listening. It's about actually hearing what your partner's saying and letting them know that you're hearing them, okay? But also it's about being present. You can't have good relationship and good communication if you're not around, if you're constantly in and out everywhere, and you're lacking the understanding of what their issues are, what they're coming to you with problems. One of the things that we hate is the whole thing of if that's your issue, or that's your problem.
That's basically like, I'm sorry that you feel that. I'm sorry that my act, like you feel that way about my actions.
I'm sorry that I killed you, but that's your fault.
I'm sorry you're so hurt by the fact of something that I've done.
I punched you in the face, but you made me.
I'm sorry you're being such a baby about it.
Yeah, exactly. Guys, that sort of, and that's quite narcissistic, isn't it? Or that sort of stuff.
It's just very belligerent, isn't it?
Even though we don't like that word because I feel like it gets thrown around so much with dads.
Yeah. That's a you problem. It's very deflective, isn't it?
Yeah. But the art of communication is better listening, better understanding, better at being present. And
taking ownership as well.
So if you feel your relationship's not where it needs to be in communication, you have to ask yourself and be honest and truthful with yourself. Have the hard conversations with yourself. Am I being better at communicating, or am I actually being standoffish? Am I being resentful? Am I holding back? Am I not really bothered? Am I seeking clarification, justification elsewhere which means then I'm not actually putting effort into the one person I should be. These are all things that you need to look at, need to explore. If you want to explore more, happy to have a one-on-one with you to talk about communication, how you can be a better communicator. If you just drop the word clinic in comments, in the comment section, then I'll get back to you and we can have a discussion and see if we can help you become a better communicator. Any more as we finish?
I think we've covered it all for this week's session.
So part 2, there we have it. Guys, if you like what we're doing, and a lot of you are responding, a lot of you are sharing, a lot of you are commenting.
Thank you for that.
Thank you very much. We need more though, guys. I need you to all do me a favour. I need you to comment. I really need you to share and subscribe, okay? I need share and subscribe. Also, on my Tired Dad Instagram page, you can subscribe for $1. What does that $1 do? It actually helps us reach other dads. You know my mission is to help 1 million dads. And that $1 subscription is going to help me to put more time and effort in helping dads through Zoom calls, helping dads in the clinic that we're opening, and helping dads be better dads in their family. So it's just $1 in the subscription that you can pay through my YouTube, Instagram page, and you'll get free content, access to my Tired Dad community, but also you're going to help fund and support other dads that are in probably worse situations than you. And I'll give you a perfect example. Go through my comments. If you go through my comments, you'll see dads reaching out, sharing, talking about how they're in bad situations because they're not seeing their kids. And they're the ones that we're helping to support, motivate, encourage, and getting into our community. So all we ask is for $1 every month from you guys once you subscribe to our YouTube, through our Instagram page. And that will help us do our job even more. And that also allows us to do things like this more and more too. So please like, comment, share, subscribe. And until next time, thank you for watching the Tired Dad podcast.
Bye.